3 News Now this week.
Now at 6 last Tuesday, the grand jury convened to decide whether to indict Jake Gardner on the death of James Scurlock. Good evening, I'm Jennifer Griswold. No decision has been made yet, but officials are bracing for possible repercussions with security measures in place downtown. 3 News Now reporter John Kipper is live outside the City-County building and tells us what's being done today. John?
Yeah, Jenny, I walked around the entire City-County building earlier today, and you could see orange barriers like the ones behind me at every entrance. You could also see well over a dozen sheriff deputies walking around the building and in and out of the building throughout the day. This all comes as we await the grand jury decision on the shooting death of James Scurlock. Now, I spoke with the head of building security earlier today, who told me that these are all precautionary measures, and that's something at least one area of business is doing as well. James Kaup, owner of the Verdict Bar and Grill, heard the gunshots the night James Scurlock was killed.
It was crazy. The last time we had a protest, we were actually inside the bar as they marched, and we sat in total darkness. It was very, very intense.
These two rocks struck his bar windows. Thankfully, the windows held up and didn't break.
We were pretty lucky.
Bracing for possible protests, he told his staff to close up after lunch on Monday, saying his #1 goal is keeping employees and customers safe from possible violence.
In fact, I have a lot of anxiety right now. That's part of the reason why I came down. We will just have to take it day by day. Hopefully we have an establishment to come back to.
Other bars near the courthouse, like the Green Room, are taking the opposite approach. With the owner telling me over the phone they're staying open, saying he feels a crowded bar makes it less likely people would target their bar with violence. Now, I spoke with Holly Barrett, the head of the Omaha Downtown Business Improvement District, who told me over the phone that she has been in contact with many of the leaders of the protest movement and that there is a lot of righteous anger in the community. She says to fully expect peaceful protests if the grand jury does not indict Jake Gardner. The grand jury is expected to be back here at the City-County building tomorrow morning. Reporting in downtown Omaha, John Kipper, 3 News Now.
Special Prosecutor Frederick Franklin said tonight it was new evidence that led the grand jury to make its decision to indict Jake Gardner. Most of that evidence, he says, came from Gardner himself. 3 News Now reporter Rudolph Snyder has more on the charges, what they mean, and what happens next.
On May 30th, during a night of violent protesting regarding the death of George Floyd, 22-year-old James Scurlock was shot and killed by former Old Market bar owner Jake Gardner. Shortly after, Douglas County Attorney Don Klein determined that Gardner acted in self-defense and no charges were filed. Then, after pushback from the public, a grand jury was called as well as a special prosecutor to look into the case. Klein himself petitioned for the grand jury to review his decision. The investigation continued and about 60 people were interviewed by the Omaha Police Department. The jury had the chance to look at new evidence and deliberated last week.
The grand jury, at the point in time that they made their decision, it's almost a slam dunk that they had much more information available to them than what was had at the time that the initial decision was made.
Special Prosecutor Frederick Franklin said most of the new evidence came from Gardner himself through his phone and Facebook messages.
There was evidence that was gathered and presented to the grand jury about activity that Jake Gardner was engaged in prior to even coming in contact with James Scurlock.
The grand jury of 16 people indicted Gardner on 4 charges: manslaughter, the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, attempted first-degree assault, and terroristic threats, which Franklin said stem from the verbal exchange between Gardner and Scurlock that night. Franklin also said the jury spent more time deliberating than what he expected, and that the decision was only confirmed Tuesday. He also added the charges do not mean Gardner is guilty. There will not be a preliminary hearing, but the case will go to trial. Reporting in Omaha, Rudolph Snyder, 3 News Now.
Franklin said at this point, Jake Gardner can either return himself in or an arrest warrant will be issued.
Just a few months ago, that barn behind me, which is 119 years old, was 8 miles south of this location. But it was brought here to Skinny Bones Pumpkin Patch in order to be fixed up and preserved. and that mission is now accomplished.
Once it was on the trailer and it finally started going down the highway, we were very excited. It's like Christmas time.
Christmas came early this year for Maria Bledsoe, and her present was something you can't fit inside a box.
I think it's a pretty nice addition to Blair area, just coming down the Highway 133 corridor.
That nice addition is this barn that's 119 years old. It was on the path of being torn down, but that's when Bledsoe and her husband saved it and turned it into a new feature at the Skinny Bones Pumpkin Patch.
We could have built something brand new, probably a little bit less cost-wise, but we wouldn't have had that history or that character behind it.
Crews gutted the inside and removed things like grain bins and replaced it with a full-service bakery and gift shop.
The plumbing, the septic system, electrical, bakery, the lighting, all that took us about a month to get all that in there and going.
Jeff Bledsoe says the barn has many unique features they kept intact, including the high beams and the floor you walk on.
The wood floor is unique for a barn. A lot of barns have a cement floor or just a dirt floor, so that's what's really unique about this.
They also refurbished things found inside the barn, including this old butcher's table, which now holds candles, along with the bakery setup.
The counters, the doors, everything we've made was from in there, and it kind of really highlights that bakery with all the antiques and everything.
The outside is fixed too. New windows and doors were added, along with the new deck, which makes you forget just how old this structure is.
120 years ago, people were farming out of this barn, and here we are still using it today.
You can't duplicate this. You cannot go out and just build brand new for what we have here. So to me, it's priceless.
In Blair, John Madden, 3 News Now.
Today's opening day for Skinny Bones. They encourage visitors to wear masks and social distance. Visit our website, 3newsnow.com, for their hours. Pretty cool looking barn there, though. Omaha's mask mandate, set to expire in late October, could be extended until at least the end of the year. Today at the Douglas County Board of Health meeting, Health Director Dr. Adi Poor said the number of cases and positivity rates last week were the lowest they'd been in the last 8 weeks. The board asked her if she thought a mask mandate should be extended monthly or further out, like the end of the year. She thought it should be discussed because not everyone will get the vaccine right away if it comes out in November or December.
That vaccine is probably very limited in the number of doses. So I would think we probably are in this. I do not foresee that we'll go down to beginning levels as we had in March. So it does make some sense for you to consider that.
Chris Rogers, the chair of the Douglas County Board of Health, said it could make sense to have a mask mandate through the school year. The city council would be the one to extend a mandate.
As announced on Wednesday, the students will soon be returning to Benson High School, along with the rest of the schools in the Omaha Public Schools district. But the Omaha Teachers Union came out on Thursday and said that this comes at a time right when teachers were getting used to e-learning. They wish the union would have been included in the discussion.
You can't maintain the in-classroom instruction and online at the same time.
President of the Omaha Education Association, Robert Miller, tells 3 News Now that teachers were just adjusting to educating virtually. Now they'll be forced to teach half their class in person and the other half online.
Because making a decision at the 3,000-foot level, though it kind of makes sense, and yeah, that can make it work, but actually being on the ground and doing and implementing that stuff is a totally different picture.
The Douglas County Health Department released data Thursday showing 42 positive cases coming from either students or staff at K-12 schools over the last 2 weeks, and 274 people are being quarantined. Looking around the metro, Millard Public Schools brought back students for full in-person learning in late August and have reported 13 active cases with 152 quarantining. Westside reports 12 total cases. Ralston says they've had 11. Omaha Public Schools has 10 staff members that have tested positive, even without students in the buildings. Miller says there's a possibility that could spike when kids come back.
Like, there's data to show that you will have cases.
In Omaha, John Kipper, 3 News Now.
Omaha Public Schools will be transitioning out of remote learning over the next month using their Family 3-2 model. The district announced the decision today, adding it will be a phased approach. 3 News Now reporter Kent Lutzen has more on what to expect.
We are ready to bring our students back.
After months of quiet hallways, Omaha Public Schools is preparing to slowly phase students and staff back into the classroom. Superintendent Dr. Cheryl Logan explained the plan on a video provided by the district.
The plan is to have all students who wish to learn in person attending on our Family 3-2 model by the start of second quarter.
The district is moving forward with opening doors to K-12 students in some specific programs like special ed starting on September 23rd. Pre-K, elementary, and middle school students will begin in-person learning on October 5th with the Family 3-2 model plan, and high school students follow on October 19th. Those opting in on the Family 3-2 model should know this. Students with the last name starting A through K will attend in-person learning Mondays and Tuesdays, and those with last names starting L through Z will attend Thursdays and Fridays. Students will swap on Wednesdays and learn from home when not in person. Dr. Logan says remote learning remains an option for students, adding in-person students should take all precautions to protect themselves from the virus.
We may have some cases of COVID-19 in our schools. We are taking all the steps that we can to ensure that we reduce the spread.
The district says all students and staff will get face coverings and hand sanitizer will be placed throughout the buildings. Dr. Logan says parents should expect an email asking if their kids will return to class or stick to remote. The form must be completed by September 20th.
Families, we certainly appreciate the amount of support that we have received since March to ensure that we can continue learning in some form.
In Omaha, Kent Lutzen, 3 News Now.
OPS plans to continue with winter sports and other extracurriculars which start in November. The district says they still plan to make up fall sports in the spring. OPS also says remote learning will be a little different for students who will be continuing with that option. Elementary students will meet for class in the morning and then access lessons remotely. They'll meet with their teacher at least once a week. Secondary students learning remotely will have a schedule similar to a regular school day. Special education services will stay the same. A team will determine whether services will be provided remotely, in person, or a combination of the two.
Stay connected at 3newsnow.com.